guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make butternut squash soup. It's really easy to make. You only need 4 ingredients. It's really good to make in a time like this because butternut squash is full of vitamin C, so it's going to help boost your immune system. So first thing you're going to need is the butternut squash. I used 2 about this big for my 1 batch and for the ratio that we're going to do today. And you also need an unsweetened, unflavored almond milk. No sugar, no flavor, low in calories, good in vitamins. And then you're also going to need water and this. Now, if you don't want to use this with water, you could just buy a chicken broth. Or if you want to make this soup completely vegetarian, you can just use vegetable broth instead of this. But for me, this is the key because the flavor in this is so good that I think it makes all the difference in the soup recipe. But I'm sure it'll be good if you just want to use a regular chicken broth or vegetable broth as well. So first thing that you're going to do is preheat the oven to 400. So then the oven will be ready after we cut up the squash and get everything ready. It's really easy to make this. We're basically gonna just bake the squash and then puree everything together. So the first step after we preheat the oven is that we're going to cut the squash. We're just gonna cut them like directly in half. And it might take me a while because these are like hard to cut through, but I'll show you. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do after we cut it is you're gonna seed it. So you're basically gonna just take a spoon and carve this out like a pumpkin. This is in the pumpkin family. They're both squash. So I kind of just carve mine out like this to get it all out in one fell swoop. Okay, now the squash is cut, so all we're going to do is lay it flat on a baking sheet to go into the oven. Now instead of just laying it completely flat, you can just see I propped up on every edge. So that way like steam and stuff can still get underneath in there and steam cook it. Alright, so we're going to let these cook for about 45 minutes to an hour. You can tell when they're cooked. The skin will be like brown and you can also touch it with a fork or something and it'll be soft. You can tell now it's hard. Yeah, so I'll show you what it looks like when it's done cooking. It's kind of just a guessing game. You can see here that they're nice and brown on top. Sometimes I'll just poke this to make sure they're soft, but you can just tell by that nice color. Alright, the next step is to let the squash cool off because we do need to let them cool off enough to where we can hold it in our hand and scrape out the squash from the skin. So coming right out of the oven, I can't hold them. You probably can't either. So I'd say maybe just like 30 minutes. Okay, squash is cooled off, so what we're gonna do is peel it out of the skin and put it into, I'm using my Ninja, of course. I'm also going to put 2 cups of water in here, 2 cups of the unsweetened original almond milk, and then 4 scoops of the chicken powder. I start with 4 scoops because you can always season it more later, but you don't want to start out with it being too salty or anything. So I'm just going to show you really quick how I scrape it out of the skin and put everything in the blender. And then I'll just show you after that how I kind of puree everything together. For the soup, you want it to be a really good consistency. You don't want it to be too thick to where you're almost chewing it or too thin to where you're like drinking it. So there's like a fine line of how to make it the thickness that you want it to be. I have 1 whole squash in the blender. with half of the water, almond milk, chicken powder mix. So I'm just gonna blend this on 4 minutes, see what happens. Perfect, we're done with the first round. You can see that it kind of looks like a baby food texture. That I would say is a little bit too thick. So I'm just gonna blend it again. Add the rest of this. You need to cook it after it's blended, so that way all the powder and everything boils together. It actually helps with the consistency as well and mixing everything. Okay, now that this is boiling, I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing to the other squash, and I'm gonna blend those two with 2 cups of water and the 2 cups of almond milk and the 4 scoops of the chicken powder. Then after that's blended, I can pour it in here and I'm gonna mix it all up. Okay, I just finished this other squash too, so I'm gonna go ahead and pour it in. This one is boiling nicely. After they boil together, and then you put it in the fridge, you know, the next day, I find that it does thicken, so if it seems too thin now, it's okay. Also, something optional that I do is red pepper flakes. I love this in there. And if you don't want to put it in there, that's fine. And if you want to try it in like your own bowl later, you can do that. All right, I'm just gonna stir it as it boils. Make sure the red pepper flakes get in everywhere. Okay, we're done. That was easy. I told you. The only thing there really is to it is putting the squash in the oven and waiting for it to bake. That's the only thing that takes a lot of time, and then waiting for it to cool off. After that, you put it in the blender, you puree everything, and then just boil it all together so that way everything mixes right. Yeah, and then the optional red pepper flakes at the end. That's my favorite. Just make sure you taste it when you're done, because like I said, you might want to put more of the powder or you might want to put salt and pepper. Up to you. The powder is obviously the only thing that I seasoned it with. I didn't season the squash before I put it in the oven because it was just going to be seasoned afterwards. And one of my favorite things to eat it with is just a piece of sourdough bread toasted. I like to dip that in there, or tortilla, or sometimes you can put like chicken in there if you want to eat something in there, like you can put things inside of it. But this soup, I never get tired of it. I'm about to eat this whole thing by myself within the next week, meal after meal after meal. And it's really good for you, has a lot of vitamin C. You get a good vegetable intake from this. Let me know if you make it, how it turned out, if you have any questions on the consistency or the recipe, or you know, if you need help on ratios because your squash is a different size than mine was. Yeah, but other than that, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel below if you liked it. Maybe share this recipe with somebody else who might enjoy it, and I'll see you next time.